What do you see as the biggest opportunity for AI across accounting, but actually maybe even the wider industries today?
AI is increasingly producing the internet that we look at.
What are the most pressing considerations for businesses and I guess for the wider society around the whole AI piece?
I think the real risk here is just getting it wrong. Just bad AI. And that's been the history of AI since the 50s. Of course, as an AI specialist, but even as a citizen, this is something that concerns me deeply and should concern you and your listeners.
Don't worry, darling, AI isn't taking over. In this episode, I'm joined by Claus Dahl, a mathematician and AI expert from Visma, to unpack the real-world impact of AI. From big opportunities and risks to how AI could level the playing field for smaller businesses, we dive into what AI means for the future of work and why it's not all about robots taking over. Claus, welcome to the podcast and thank you very much for joining me. I've been looking forward to this conversation to dive a little bit more into AI and kind of talk to you on that topic. So thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much for asking. It's always fun to talk about AI.
Excellent. Well, let's get going then. So look, I think the first question for me is, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for AI across, accounting, but actually maybe even the wider industries today?
Yeah, I think I'm actually a little bit surprised, having been in the field for as many years as I have. I've been doing this for around 8 years and so. And there's been an interesting kind of shift, because we used to, when I started working in AI, we were very much focused on doing routine tasks, because there's a lot of routine tasks and we want to settle for something that is easy to do. But it turns out that actually the leading thing that people are using AI for now that is valuable is actually something that nobody thinks is routine, which is writing software. Almost every business that's out there that employs software developers are turning to AI to lower the cost of producing software. So that's actually the leading application right now, which is a little bit interesting, that the tables have been turned on the software industry, if you will, from being the last people to get automated to being the first people to get automated. Apart from that, I think search will be interesting. Google's fortunes will be interesting in the next few years, given all of these AI tools that are here to answer our questions. So that's tremendously important. And then apart from search, which basically sifts through the internet of information, we are, of course, will all be using various AI services to sift through all the other information, all of the information processing that happens in industry, in the enterprise. I think these are the three kind of top things that are happening. Simply managing the load of information in front of us and software and automation. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, just digging into a couple of those. The search specifically is really interesting because, I'm like yourself, Claus. Probably around when the beginning of the internet as we know it now was there, and search was quite easy then. There was a few thousand, tens of thousands web pages, right? So it was easier to index, easier to find, and now you have an internet that is billions and billions and billions of websites and pages and information. So being able to more effectively search, and I do wonder if companies like Google that have had the monopoly for so long might actually, for the first time, have a genuine competitor within AI. And if someone can do the AI search thing well, could Google actually potentially, be at threat in the same way that many other of the initial search providers, Yahoo
and I think it's actually, and it's interesting you mentioned Yahoo, because there's something to say about that. I think actually Google are probably in worse trouble, because AI is also increasingly producing the internet that we look at. And that means that, and the main purpose of using AI for that is actually to ruin Google's algorithms, right? To get to the top of the rankings. So I think there's going to be some warfare between the AIs that interpret the information that is being presented to us and the AIs that are producing the information. And if you kind of have a pre-AI product for that, such as Google does. Obviously, they've been using AI for many years to answer our questions, but then you're a little bit at risk there. So, and it's funny that you should mention Yahoo, which is kind of a a curated internet service back in the day in the 90s. I think there's a real chance that we'll turn back to more curated sources simply because the larger internet has become too unreliable, too generated. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think Google could very well be in trouble. I'm not sure the winners will be Perplexity. It could be somebody that are just better at data curation. Yeah.
well, like Google in the day, right? Like no one knew who Google was till everyone knew who Google was. They were
Absolutely. Yeah.
a little startup, little plucky little business that came out of nowhere and very quickly dominated an industry to the point where they became the term for searching, like
Yeah.
Hoover and
Yeah.
Kleenex and all those other like brand names that become synonymous with
Absolutely.
the whole industry.
No, they
So
were
I
very
guess
plucky. Yeah.
yeah, they were. So I guess the thing that most people when they're thinking about AI are concerned about or come to mind is around ethics and safety. So from your perspective, what are the most pressing considerations for businesses and I guess for the wider society around the whole AI piece?
Yeah. This is an extremely interesting question, and I think it's of course, as an AI specialist, but even as a citizen, this is something that concerns me deeply and should concern you and your listeners. I think I'm a little bit sad about the discourse around this because there seems to me, partly because of the type of, it's being used as kind of scare marketing by the big AI vendors. There's a lot of focus on kind of superhuman AI, the future where, the Terminator future of where some kind of dominant AI will control us all. And I think it's somewhat overblown and it obscures the real risks. I think the real risk here is just getting it wrong. Just bad AI, pretty good AI that isn't really actually any good. So just making sure that Mrs. Jones gets the right advice for how she runs her business instead of horrible mistakes about how to file your taxes or whatever that could be. So making sure that Mr. Jones get the right treatment in the hospital instead of some bad AI devised treatment plan. So I think the core concern that we of course have as professionals in the industry is to ensure the fidelity, if you will, of the AIs that we produce for other people, making sure that we carefully evaluate the risks and limit them. And I think that's really the key. If you look at some of the big AI things that are out there, such as ChatGPT, there's, of course, this concern is there, but everybody knows you can get pretty much any answer you like out of these big bots. So we need a little bit more effort into just basic sanity. And that's, of course, the work we do every day when we work with it professionally.
It's a really interesting point. I think it's like any new tool. And I go back to the start of the internet. When the internet started, everyone built a web page. There was many thousands of very bad web pages. And I'd like to say that I produced a few of my own. And then over the years, it gets more professional. The web pages get better. The industry is lifted. And then the tools become better to create your own. And it kind of starts again. So I think you're right. I'm just disappointed that you don't see a future with the Terminator with AI because I've already packed my cans and everything under the sofa just in case.
Of course, we all have our go bags at home. But I have to say, I think Vladimir Putin is a more clear and present danger than the Terminator. I have to say in that regard. But I think we should be interested in these bigger risks, but I think again it's more. I think overconfidence in AI is the bigger problem there. Even when it comes to the superhuman intelligences, it's very plausible that somebody would market something as superhuman and fail. And here's a fun little data point for you. From the history of AI. So self-driving cars, of course, is something that we've been promised for quite some time. And I found a fun website just a month or two ago, and they had actually found all of the occurrences, all of the times Elon Musk said that he would that we'd have self-driving cars next year. And he did that every year for 10 years from 2012 to 2022. And we still don't have self-driving cars. There's this overconfidence that the future will get here. And I think that's the key risk also, even in terms of the superhuman intelligences.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. I think like the real world, there are people in the real world that are far scarier than things we draw up. And I never realized that about Elon Musk saying that it's coming next year.
It's always next year. That's been the history of AI since the 50s. No, we'll be there soon. Yeah.
We had a great program in the UK called Tomorrow's World, and it used to be it's a tech program that was basically for kids, and it would show you the technology that was coming and the technology that was coming, and invariably, someone went back and looked at all the big things that were coming, and where they did arrive, often they were many years after the prediction of arrival. So I'm 100% with you on that. So how do you, because I think one of the other concerns that people have around AI, outside the ethics and security, is the impact it's going to have on jobs, on people, and how AI could potentially be used to kind of, drive efficiencies, and by that generally use less people, right? So how do you see AI shaping the future of work, specifically around kind of job creation, skills needs? And do you see like a potential positive and a negative in that, or do you think again the risks overinflated?
I think clearly, it wouldn't be interesting if it wasn't producing changes. So obviously, change will come. I think this is like 100 years old. This has been a discussion since the Industrial Revolution that technology will change our world. 100 years ago, John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist, had a prediction that maybe his grandchildren would only work 15-hour work weeks because we're automating away all the work. So they would just have these very short working days. And obviously, we've gone in that direction. The typical working hour now is way shorter than it was in the 1910s, 1920s. But we're still not there. I mean, my working weeks tend to not be 15 hours. I don't know. Maybe yours are. I don't know. But not typically. And I think it's a little bit the same thing here, that of course there's going to be some efficiencies, but again, you're kind of over-indexed on superhuman AI if you think that they will run themselves. They are not going to run themselves. They need to be built, and they need to be managed, and they need to be steered in a beneficial direction. So there's going to be a lot of jobs like that, even jobs we haven't even thought about yet. Think of the safety risk I was just talking about in terms of, are we doing the right thing with all of these AI tools? So, AI evaluation is probably a new job category that's gonna, I haven't seen the first job ad for it, but it's coming. I'm certain of it. Where people will get jobs which are basically coexisting with AI, where that's your explicit job description. How can I coexist? How can I steer the AI in the right direction? And I think I think that's going to be a lot of work for us. Additionally, of course, efficiencies have usually proved beneficial. Things that didn't make financial sense with less efficient tools will start to make financial sense. So new businesses will spring up that are suddenly possible because of AI. A very obvious example in our industry is that in a lot of very small businesses, they simply don't have their own finance department. They actually really don't know the economic outlook of their company except a few times per year when their admin office comes in and looks at the books. And of course, with automation, we can provide that kind of oversight the entire year. So they'll be able to run their business more efficiently and optimize it in ways that has only been accessible to larger companies that could kind of pay for that investment into a finance department. Now we can give automated finance departments to everybody, which I think will improve a lot of outcomes for businesses.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess I always reflect back when Xero launched in New Zealand and then in the UK, everyone said, well, cloud bookkeeping is going to cost people their jobs. And then when receipt scanning came in through Dext and Receipt Bank in the UK, that was going to be the thing that was going to cost people their jobs. But actually, inherently, what it's done is the accounting industry still has a massive challenge in the UK around capacity and recruitment. So
The
far
reality in
from
our industry is that people are turning away work because they cannot find the people to do the work.
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had the humiliating experience of being fired by your accountant, but I have, and it was like, they simply couldn't make enough money off of me. So they needed another level of efficiency to make sense of having me around as a customer. There were other people they could make more money off of. So, and I think that is typical for the entire industry. So we are not gonna, AI will make no admin personnel unemployed. They'll just do more valuable stuff than what the AI was doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think anyone that looks at that this technology in that it's going to cost jobs, well, guess what? It's probably, if you're not willing, I always think that, like, if you're not willing to change and adapt AI, it will probably cost you your job, or
Yeah,
work with a new technology. If you're not willing to work with bookkeeping technology, if you're not willing to work with receipt scanning technology, you become obsolete, not the job.
it's a pretty safe bet that you're going to coexist with some AI in whatever job you have. So, better get used to it. It's a little bit like refusing to use a computer to do your work. Probably doesn't work in many jobs. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a factory worker in the Western world that isn't coexisting with very advanced machinery on a daily basis. That's what the job is, and it's a little bit the same thing is going to happen now to office work with AI equipment.
So, as we're talking about companies, what should companies consider when adopting AI to ensure it adds genuine value to what they're doing? Because I guess we're in that stage for me with AI that everyone is slapping AI on everything and saying, "Oh, we have AI," but what they really have is, at best, a version of Chat GPT that they've rebranded and put out for themselves. So,
Yeah.
what do companies need to do to kind of, make sure AI is adding genuine value to what they're doing, rather than just being someone else that's just sticking a label on something?
I think you almost give the answer in the question. Focus on genuine value. As I like to say again, we talk to a lot of teams and they're contemplating AI. And the type of AI that I'm working on is not really something that you typically interact with and say, but that's not AI. They think AI is ChatGPT. It's that thing you're talking to. And what I always say is, well, I mean, I'm sorry to burst your bubble here, but we're technically not in the conversation business. That's Facebook. They're in the conversation business. We're in the self-driving car business. So we want to think about the efficiencies that we can provide with AI, insight and efficiency, right? How can we provide a value add? And I think for most businesses, that's really the core point. Don't focus on having your employees talk a lot to robots. Focus on the work that the robots are able to do for you. That would be
Yeah,
the key advice here. And
I
again,
think that's
evaluation. Make sure that you hire somebody to actually look at the efficiency you're getting out. Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I think you're so right, and you're right. I probably did give that away, right? It's like, don't just have an AI product for the sake of having an AI product. Have an AI product that's going to actually add value and
Yeah.
stand out. So probably on that, then a good question to ask an AI expert would be, what are some of your favorite AI products that are out in the marketplace that you've seen and that you go, God, I wish I'd come up with that.
Oh, yeah, that I think I have to say, as a software professional for many years, I've been in this industry for 25 years or so. I it's an industry where there's a lot of, you have to experiment a lot. And then as software gets more and more complex, your experiments get more and more boring because you're spending so much time configuring and setting up, and it's just boring. And I think was it Satya Nadella that said programming is fun again when he sat down with some of these AI tools. And I fully concur. It's just, I used to have, my test used to be, what can I accomplish in an hour? I don't have a day to sit down and work on something. I have an hour. And with these AI tools, you can build fully fleshed ideas. You can turn an idea into a fully fledged product that you launch on the internet in an hour. And that is compelling. So you get to test out ideas much, much more quickly. So I think that for me is the really, really big thing. Then as a pet thing, I think I would mention Suno, the music creator, because that's just because I like music. So much fun to sit and write a song in 2 minutes. So that would be my recreational bonus feature that
I
I
love
really
that.
like. Yeah.
I think that for me is the power of and the interest in AI in that at the moment there are tools that can help you with everything, right? Like
Yep.
there's graphic tools, there's like I found a great tool the other day where you can feed it a report and it creates a podcast, a 10-minute podcast of two people talking about that report. And for me, that's perfect because I only generally have 10 to 15 minutes to listen to something, usually in between a meeting. So to be able to be able to distill a 30-page report into key talking points and have it delivered by two people having a conversation, that's a brilliant thing for me where I can
Yep.
go, love that. And then simple things like I'm someone I talk about this a lot. I'm a little dyslexic. It's not a binary thing. You either are or you're not, but I always say a little bit, right? So using ChatGPT in its basic form just to proofread something I write to make sure that the spelling and grammar is correct is, a really great time saver for me because I can kind of write something, put it in there, and it comes out as something that is 99% of the time right. Occasionally it just goes a bit rogue and writes something
Yeah.
completely different. That's always the interesting one.
Absolutely. They're often a little bit verbose, so that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the joke on the internet where, you have all of these HR systems for hiring, and what they do is basically digest resumes into one-liners.
Yeah.
And the thing is, all of these resumes were probably made with some other AI tool. So you basically have these AIs talking to each other that people have like, I would like this job, and then they have an AI bloated up to a 3-page resume, and then another AI sits at the other end and says, "This guy would like this job." And that's how it goes. Yeah.
So to wrap up, if you had to give one piece of advice to a business adopting AI today, what would it be to ensure they get real value from it as a business?
Let your people experiment. Rule number one. Make sure you're trying for something, and then be careful about quality. But I think rule number one is make sure that you have a culture where people are allowed to try interesting ways to do their job. That's
Love that.
rule number one.
Claus, thank you very much for your time.
It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Silver Linings podcast, which was written and produced by me, Phil Hopton, and Lara Bolsonaro. The podcast is edited by Lee Stallard and Nomad Video. If you'd like to find out more about Silverfin, you can visit us at silverfin.co.uk or check us out on LinkedIn.